Welcome to the War Academy channel. We find ourselves in the summer of 1944. Germany is being heavily bombed by Allied aircraft, and practically all its big cities are destroyed. As we can imagine, the German civilian population deeply hated these Allied aviators, even calling them flying terrorists. Due to this suffering of the civilian population, when one of these planes was shot down, what normally happened was the following. If German army soldiers were the first to arrive on the plane, they usually gave protection to their new POWs and transferred him to a prison camp. But, if the first to arrive at the impact site were civilians, in the vast majority of cases the pilot was executed by the population. This is where the word lynching comes from. It was at the beginning of that summer of 1944 when Hitler had the idea of converting these acts that the indignant civil population carried out in an isolated and spontaneous way, into something official and systematic. Given the inability of the Luftwaffe to protect the German skies, the message that was wanted to be sent to the Allied pilots was that they would be treated as terrorists if captured and would be executed immediately. Basically, we can say that it had a dissuasive intention. When the German leader made this proposal to Keitel and Jodl, called the lynching law, both men as representatives of the Army High Command felt rejection. As they commented, the members of the Allied forces were soldiers who were limited to complying with their orders when they bombarded German cities. Keitel's reflection was that those responsible for launching the V-1 rockets over London could be accused of being terrorists as well, and that if they began to apply such laws, he had no idea how far they could go. On the other hand, it was true that the casualties and damage caused by the Allies in these bombardments were much higher. In any case, were they going to get carried away by the action itself, or by the effects it caused? Keitel then made the following indications. First of all, he had to clarify the concept of a flying terrorist, based on international law. Secondly, an ultimatum would have to be sent to the Allied countries, in which they were warned that such a measure was going to be applied in Germany. The German leader's response to such proposals was that the circumstances of the war did not allow him to be so diplomatic, and that his generals were very impractical. According to Keitel, in an attempt not to apply this law that the German leader was determined to implement, he made a proposal with a series of points to be discussed in the future. The first option was that the flying terrorists be tried before a military court, in which one sentence or another would be established, depending on the circumstances. The second point advocated handing over Allied airmen to the police. And finally, and as a third option, the flying terrorists would be handed over to the civilian population, so that they could do what they saw fit. It is in this option that the much-desired lynching would take place. With the situation being like this, the debate continued to expand until it reached the vast majority of high-ranking German commanders. One of the most important opinions was that of Hermann Göring himself, because as head of the Luftwaffe, he was in charge of many of the prison camps in which these captured Allied pilots were held. The position of the Marshal of the Reich was very similar to that of Keitel, and he also positioned himself against applying it. This issue continued to evolve with long debates, in which the term flying terrorist was attempted to be established exactly, and without any ambiguity. The conclusion reached, which is recorded in personal correspondence between Keitel himself and Göring, was the following. It was said that they would agree to accept the executions of some of these Allied pilots, but only under very special conditions. Those pilots who attack a civilian population, with the sole objective of causing them the greatest possible damage, the planes that open fire against parachutists in descent, those who machine gun trains of civilians, and lastly, to bomb military or civilian hospitals. Having fixed these points, Keitel and Göring agreed, and prepared to apply the law when the German leader finally decided to do so. As we mentioned at the beginning, although this idea began to take shape at the end of May 1944, the events that followed made Hitler very busy with other matters. With the landing of Normandy on June 6 and the Bagration operation for the 22nd, this matter was left in the background. According to Keitel, the final event that made the German leader completely forget about the issue, and not ask for it again, was the attack he suffered on July 20 at his headquarters in East Prussia. During the Nuremberg trials, Keitel was tried for this lynching law, which was not clear if it had been applied or not. Keitel's response, after giving all the explanation that we have just seen, was that it was never applied and that after the attack on Hitler on July 20th, it was not considered again. However, there was a last attempt to carry it out during the last weeks of the contest. This new debate was caused by the Allied bombing of Dresden on February 13, 14 and 15. After learning that tens of thousands of civilians had died in this attack, and with the German capital already threatened directly by the Soviet armies, an attempt was made to promulgate a law by mid-March 1945 that indicated the following. All bomber crews who were in German prison camps, as well as all future airmen who were captured, had to be executed immediately. In a similar way to what happened with the Naren Order, in which it was intended that all German infrastructure be demolished, this law also fell on deaf ears and nobody wanted to take responsibility for it, so it was not carried out in the end. And you, what do you think? To what extent do you think the bombing of the civilian population is justified, no matter how much it is one more act of war? Do you consider that these bombings on Germany were terrorist acts? Do you agree with Keitel when he said that all that would have been crazy? He left you another program in the description, in which we saw exactly what the damage of these bombings on German cities was. We say goodbye here. Many thanks to everyone, especially the sponsors who make this possible. Subscribe and share this program if you liked it, and see you in the next one. See you soon.